Hi, everyone. I am delighted to be here today with Kirk Fernandes, CEO and founder of Merit. We're going to talk about how to build a strong relationship between product managers and engineering teams. For those of you that don't know me, I am Irene Yu. I am the CEO and the founder of Skiplevel, where I help product managers level up their technical skills and be able to communicate and work better with engineering teams. I've also been a software engineer for over 10 years. I'm also a product advisor to startups. So before we jump into the interview, Kirk, I think our viewers would love to know a little bit more about you, including your product management experience.
Sure. So I'm Kirk, founder of Merit. It's a mentorship platform for the under-networked tech worker. And I'm old, so I have like a decade of PM design and engineering experience at big tech like Microsoft, startups like Hightower, freelance, growth stage tech companies, and eventually now a founder at Merit. And Merit is really my thesis on kind of building careers in tech, and like networks are really the way to grow your career. So we built this really wonderful mentorship platform to allow everyone to hack a great network to grow their career. So that's my background.
Amazing. I'm very excited to talk about mentoring and tech mentorship, which is something that I've actually done myself. But first, I want to start with, in my experience working in the tech industry, product management and engineering is one of those relationships that is so vitally important and so interdependent. Yet it's also one of those relationships in tech that can be really hard to get right. And it's often fraught with a push and a pull. And that's been my experience. So I would love to hear if you feel that that's also in line with your experience.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes the relationship is almost like authoritarian or antagonistic because some PMs think that they're the boss of the engineers or the designers, but it's really about understanding that it's kind of like a three-way collaboration to solve a problem. And I do find, like, I was a PM, I studied computer science at the University of Waterloo. Having that technical degree did help with certain engineers in building credibility.
Yeah.
But I do think it's really just about that word, like credibility. And credibility to me is really when you talk to someone, do you know what you're talking about?
Do you know what you're talking about? Yeah, I want to talk about that too.
It sounds so dumb, but that's literally what it is. And I think a lot of people use technical experience or the ability to code or design. It's really about a proxy for credibility. So for me, yes, like in some of the early days at Microsoft, it did feel a little bit antagonistic because when I was naive and I was 22 and I didn't know what I was doing. But also I think they were sussing me out. They're like, is this guy going to be like another weird PM that thinks they're the boss of everyone? Or is this someone who's actually going to problem solve with me? So I think it's antagonistic, but not usually at the fault of the people, but rather at the dynamic of the relationship.
Yeah, totally. And when you talk about credibility, and I love that you use the word, do you know what you're talking about, right? Because I think that's one of the engineers' biggest fears.
Yeah, totally.
Is that they're going to work with the product manager and the product manager is not going to be able to empathize with them.
Yeah.
And then and yet they're coming from this place of like calling the shots of, like, when can I have this out?
Yes.
And so I want to dive a little bit more into that because I think, especially on product Twitter, people talk about empathy all the time. Like, you have to empathize.
Yeah.
I think it goes both ways, by the way. I do think engineers have to empathize with product managers, but let's just focus in on engineering for a second.
Yeah.
What does it mean to say empathizing with engineers? Like, how do you empathize with engineers, right? That's such a buzzword. Like, in your experience, like, what does that mean? And like, what does that look like in a day-to-day?
I think empathy is really around understanding that my job and their job is different. Like, I have a maker schedule. I have a manager schedule. They have a maker schedule. And I think it's really also about understanding that we have a shared goal, ideally, of like solving a customer or business problem. But what we do or contribute are vastly different. Like, they're more about feasibility. And to me, engineering is really about trade-offs. Understanding the trade-offs to make something real.
Totally. Yeah.
And, in a startup, the trade-offs are different versus big tech, and understanding there's no perfect solution or answer to any of these problems. And it's really about really understanding, like, something is going to take longer. Why? Is it like a motivation issue? Is it a capability issue? Is it a debt issue? And really being able to have these conversations with engineers in a way that makes you look like, what you're talking about.
What you're talking about.
I think it's understanding of, to me, I really synthesize engineering and design. It's like understanding what trade-offs you're making to solve a problem.
Yeah.
And understanding your contribution. You're not making the thing. PMs don't make anything. So like understanding your role in this dynamic.
I mean, product managers play such an important role in designing and shipping software, but ultimately, the bottom line are the engineers who have to build it. I love that you use the word trade-offs, and I want to go a little bit deeper into that because it's something that I teach so much at Skiplevel.
Yeah.
So much of the time when product managers, they know that they're lacking some sort of technical experience because they're having trouble empathizing with engineers, with the engineering experience and considerations. Their way of kind of going about bridging that technical literacy gap is to learn how to code.
Yes.
But at Skiplevel, what I teach is the engineering mindset. And so much of the engineering mindset is understanding what technical trade-offs are.
100%.
When an engineer looks at a feature, they look at a product, they're looking at it differently from product managers. They're thinking about, how do I build this so that it's maintainable? How do I build this so that it's secure? How do I build this so that it's reliable? What are the decisions that I can make that balances the amount of time that it takes to build, the ease to which, we can build it? And also, are we making any decisions that will incur such a tech debt that we can't come back from it in the future?
Totally.
Right. So there's so many of these different kind of technical trade-offs. And as you mentioned, there are different technical trade-offs at different companies. If you work at Amazon, like I did for 3.5 years, when you work at that type of scale, scalability is a really big factor. Versus if you're at a startup and you have maybe like 10,000 users, scalability and fault tolerance isn't going to be as big of a concern than, when you're at a really big company. So, understanding and being able to empathize with engineers is adopting that engineering mindset and having enough, baseline understanding of how software works. Even understanding baseline like physical servers, once you understand the physical aspects of the internet and software and how it really underlines so much of the decisions that we make, then we can learn a lot more about technical trade-offs and then be able to empathize with engineers. And as product managers are looking at writing requirements, they have that sort of knowledge in line as they're building these features. That's what I think, when we talk about, we have to empathize with engineers. It's like we have to empathize with what it takes to really, one, do their job, which is a software development lifecycle, right? Which is not just coding. I think coding is just like a very small part of it. It's probably the easiest part of an engineer's job, actually. And there's so much more to it, but also just kind of understanding how engineers have to consider their work, and what are the factors that go into it, because building a super reliable and maintainable software is actually super hard.
And I think your point about like learning to code is different than understanding what it is to engineer something. I think is like a super amazing insight. And like, I wish you told me that 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago, because even with Merit, I coded parts of Merit. I coded in Hightower, I coded in Microsoft. And you realize what you're doing as a PM there is you're kind of like taking some, like I used to do a lot of like usability prototyping and interaction design prototyping. And some of that was useful for the team, but you're also just taking kind of like the most fun parts away from them versus like actually slogging through the stuff that you should be doing. And I think the framework of engineering and the framework of thinking like an engineer is the most important thing to learn to build credibility. No one cares if you can code like that. I think that's like a very naive, or it's like a first year PM, like my model of like approaching it. And I think that's super spot on. And I think something that one of my managers at Microsoft, Lynn, taught me, and she was like, as a PM, you're kind of driven by your outputs are like artifacts, like documents, and outputs, like you're getting to a specific metric. And all you can really do, and this is true for managers, and PM is like a meta level manager, all you can do is make things easier or make things clearer. So sometimes you cannot make things easier. Shit is just hard. What you can do is like make things clear, like better documentation, removing obstacles, removing annoying people. Sometimes, things aren't clear, but you can make things easier. So you do the grunt work, you do QA, you do the documentation, you bring donuts. But I think every PM should really think about the interactions they have with their team, and as a manager with your reports, like when they talk to me, did I make things easier or clearer? Ideally one, even better both. But if I'm not, then I'm probably just making it harder for people to do their job. And I think that's where the antagonism comes from, is like,
Yes,
people interact with PMs and they don't make things easier and they don't make things clearer. So I think that kind of is at the root of that kind of opposition. Does that make sense?
That kind of fraught relation, 1,000%. That's exactly how I feel, but then I think the difficult part for PMs come down to, well, like, how do I make things clearer? It's not like I don't, most product managers I work with, they're like, I want to be a vital part of this team. Like, I want to be able to help. It's just that I don't know what I don't know.
Yeah.
And so
that's great.
Yeah. That was also, and I definitely want to talk about tech mentorship. So in Skiplevel, I teach, technical foundations and engineering mindset.
Yeah.
But something else that I teach that I think is so important is, how do you work well with engineers?
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to share one tip, and that I, as a product advisor, I still do when I work with engineering teams at startups. At the end of every meeting or any interaction, I say, guys, what's one thing that I can do that will make your job easier right now?
Yeah.
Something that what is something I can do?
Yeah.
It's, so for example, I've worked with an engineering team that's like, we need to get this documentation from this third party because there's a bunch of unknowns. So we need this documentation from them and we need to send this email. And so that's something easy I can do. Like, okay, let me send this email. Let me CC everyone. Let me kind of take over that sort of communication so that I can allow you guys as much time to build as possible.
Yeah.
And, this is a trick that a product manager I worked with at Amazon actually asked me this question. And I was so disarmed because I have never been asked that question from a product manager at all. I've only ever, most product managers I've worked with have always been asking me for things.
Yes.
And so when a product manager was like, what can I do to make your job easier? I was like, oh, wow. That feels amazing. So, that's like such an easy, simple, way, and like a mindset shift for product managers to kind of really build that strong relationship between engineers. Because who doesn't like to be helped, right?
Yeah, it's a service job, right? It's like similar to being a manager, similar to being a DC. So like on Merit, it's a mentorship platform for PMs, designers, engineers.
Yeah.
A big thing I encourage is other engineers or PMs to talk to the opposite roles at other companies. Because all I can really say is, like, don't just talk to the engineers that you work with day to day. Practice, get feedback. Like, there's no one kind of engineer, there's no one kind of PM. And a lot of this work is triangulation, where some of the stuff I did in Microsoft was very successful, but I tried to do it at Hightower and it just did not translate because there are different set of engineers, different constraints. Like, everyone is a human being. So the big thing I would encourage PMs, for example, is to build relationships with engineers you don't work with directly, because you'll get a lot of intel, a lot of insight, whether that's friends, people outside of your immediate team, or use products and platforms like Merits to kind of hack that kind of networking and coffee chats, because you just get so much more insight, because they will tell you. They'll tell you, like, oh, that's why that guy is being weird about it. He's worried about this. I was like, oh, I don't know that. Like, I had no idea. So a big part of being product manager is like, to your point about making things like clearer, is like, a lot of it's about collecting information and use every conversation as a place to collect information and like essentially be a little bit richer with the information gathering. Don't just like talk to the same people over and over again, because there's diminishing returns on that. And it depends on the level of trust.
Yeah, Kirk, I love that you mentioned that. I've actually never thought about that, but this is kind of a good segue talking about tech mentorship, because I started Skiplevel through my own tech mentorship experience, kind of mentoring a product manager who had come to me after a product engineering meeting. And, props to her. She was really vulnerable. And she said, Irene, I really, can you help me? Because I don't know what's going on in these engineering meetings. And so often you guys are saying stuff that I don't understand, and I'm afraid to ask because I don't want to derail the meeting, and I don't want to look, like
dumb.
I'm dumb. Essentially. So she was, asked if I can kind of help her, like guide her through some of this stuff. And, when I felt flattered that she came to me, which is really awesome.
As you should.
And so what we started doing was a couple of things. One of them was we started actually doing bi-weekly meetings, recurring meetings, where we would use some sort of content to jump off of the meeting. So for example, like, a piece of documentation, an architecture diagram or an API documentation. We're going through all of like the docs that we have, through that tech mentorship experience, I started realizing, wow, there were a lot of things that she didn't know, but things that I thought were common knowledge. As an engineer, I thought was common knowledge. I realized that really was not common knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, no one explains, no one onboards.
Right. And I had this moment of like introspection where I was like, oh yeah, why would they know that? That's not something in their day-to-day job that they're being exposed to, versus as an engineer, I am being exposed to it every single day. So that really opened my eyes and really helped me empathize with product managers, actually. And so through that mentorship experience, I've been able to kind of understand what, product managers know and what they don't know, and then teach them that technical knowledge that they need, one, but two, also teach them about the product that they actually work on, like the technical aspects of the product. So so that was one. And the other one was I would mentor her while she was writing like requirement docs.
Cool.
When she's thinking through feasibility of things. And so I felt like that tech mentorship experience was so valuable for both of us.
Yeah. I think that's amazing. That's fantastic. I wish I had some of that when I was younger in my career. That's like the main motivating factor why we built Sparent. And I think your point about like, you did like a very small networking loop between two people. And what you're really doing is de-risking kind of both of your jobs, because you're sharing and learning more. And that's the thesis behind Merit, which is like, the more diverse, the more actionable, and the more your network grows, the more it de-risks your career. And I think you've hacked that and did that out of pure empathy and kind of motivation. But if we can build systems or loops or culture where people, I think when I was younger, I was like, I don't want to look dumb and ask a stupid question. But then you get older and you're like, smart people ask a million questions. And they don't stop asking questions. And I think it's about, you created a space where people could feel psychologically safe to ask those questions. So it's that safety. So I think it's about bootstrapping those places to act. And maybe it's not in the meeting or the board meeting or the all hands, but it's somewhere else, right? But if you don't have the space to ask those questions, we're all kind of running out of those assumptions. So I think that's like textbook mentorship, which is like someone has a problem and you help them kind of learn through it, through a very practical, empirical example. Right?
And, I was able to forge this one-on-one close relationship with this product manager. And so because of that, during meetings, I would also kind of go out of my way to help her a little bit, to stop the team and say maybe, oh, just for so-and-so's benefit, this is kind of what we're talking about. Or even, when I work with her on roadmap, like that's a really big thing, right? Between product managers and engineers, where it's like product managers, like, I need this out in 3 months. And engineers are like, no, we can't. And there's like this kind of like fight over it. And so, even my relationship with this product manager, I'm able to have like so much more like easier conversations about roadmaps and timelines. Awesome. And so just being able to build that strong relationship, I think is awesome. And, you mentioning about do mentorship with people at other companies, you're totally right. They're able to kind of not have that emotional, baggage. And so they're able to offer a different perspective as well. And I think it's really awesome.
Yeah. And I think it's to always remind yourself that you're dealing with human beings, and we all have different styles of communications, different pressures, different company cultures. So like, just acknowledging that it's a constant state of learning to get to a position of agreement. I think the roadmap example is really dope because you kind of need to treat it like a negotiation, and you don't want it to feel like you're trying to like pass a bill in Congress or whatever, and it's really like it's like really mind-numbing, or at least this Congress. But it is like to the earlier point we talked about, like engineering is about trade-offs, and I think like roadmaps are about trade-offs. Like there's no solution that makes anyone happy. And it's the more you can be upfront and get people like to get like almost like affirmative consent into the trade-offs. It's not about like being right or winning. It's about like doing the right thing. And like, that's all you can do as a PM, is to shepherd yourself towards the right thing. But that requires a lot of talking with everyone involved, and a lot of like understanding, and like, I would ask questions, which is like, are you happy with this direction? Like, what would make you excited? Are you worried? Like, do you think we're going down the wrong track? And I think those conversations are the most informative if they can be done in a way that people can be honest, which is hard, and I acknowledge that. And requires trust, but it gets you inside of like, people don't make stuff up, is what I've learned. So like if someone's like upset or like not into something, there's usually a reason why. You may disagree with the reason, but you want to understand it on some level. So I think the roadmap example is like really good, because that's like the distillation of like going through a negotiation or a trade-off or like a back and forth.
Yeah, absolutely. So how does, I know that Merit, do you see a lot of product managers and engineers kind of doing mentorship sessions with each other?
Yeah. And I think what's really dope is like, product is a team sport. So like PMs to designers to engineers. And I do think like the word empathy is really important, but it's really about understanding like everyone has like a role on the fields.
Yeah.
And like the more you understand the other person's like I'm not a sports person, this might be a shitty metaphor, but the more you understand like people's roles on the field, maybe the more you can do a pass or get a goal in, right? I think that's the framework that I kind of teach folks. So there's a lot of cross-discipline mentorship. And I think that's what makes Merit really powerful, because it's not just for PMs or designers or engineers, it's for product people. And, we'll have QA people on and data people. And I do really try to tell folks that product is a team sport. It'll always be a team sport. So like we ship and win as a team. Everyone has a position to play. So that's super powerful. Not a lot of people do it though. You kind of have to encourage people to be like, oh, I can only talk to other PMs. I can only talk to other designers. I can only talk to other engineers. And that's obviously not true, because every day in your job, you talk to everyone that you need to talk to get. So it's a little bit of education.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you mentioned that. This has been an awesome conversation, Kirk. I love that we were able to kind of bring my software engineering experience and your product management experience and have this awesome conversation about how to build a stronger relationship with PMs and engineers. Hopefully our viewers were able to kind of learn some things from this conversation. Before we hop off, I just wanted to give you the opportunity to tell the viewers a little bit more about Merit, and I can talk a little bit more about Skiplevel, but why don't you go first? Yeah, Merit is a mentorship platform for the under-networked tech worker. We connect first-year PMs, designers, engineers to the future version of themselves, to grow their craft, to grow their career, and to grow their connections. It's completely free. So if you're in the US and Canada and PM design and engineering, please sign up, get-merit.com. Use it today. Awesome. Get-merit.com. Awesome. That's going to be also linked in this post. And I'm Irene. I'm the founder of Skiplevel, where we have a comprehensive on-demand program where we help product managers become more technical, learn all of the technical skills that they need in order to feel more confident about their technical knowledge and skills, and be able to work better with their engineering team. So that's skiplevel.co. If you want to visit, check that out. Thank you again, Kirk. This has been really amazing. And I look forward to seeing how the mentorship platform grows. Likewise, congrats on everything on Skiplevel. I wish we had this conversation 10 years ago when I joined Microsoft. It would have helped me a lot in the first years of being a PM. Yeah, amazing. Thanks so much, Kirk. Take care.